Hey guys, welcome to the Daily Word Bible Study, a book by book, chapter by chapter, and verse by verse study of the entire Bible, plain and simple. We are starting a new book, Esther, and Esther is the last book in this section of the Bible. Let me just do a quick breakdown. The Bible could be broken down into several sections. From Genesis to Esther is the historical narrative. The next section, as it is arranged in our Bible, the book of poetry and wisdom. So the books of Job, Proverbs, Psalms, Ecclesiastics, okay, Song of Solomon. And then the writings of the prophets, both minor and major. We get to those later. Then you come to the New Testament. You have the writings of the Gospels, the four Gospels, and include the book of Acts. And then the other section is the letter of the epistles. Each section, the books are arranged as best as they can in order of age, in other words, of dating. So as I said, we're coming to this is the last book of the historical narrative section, Esther. It is written in the same time period as Nehemiah and Ezra. And so what we need to understand about that these are what's called post Babylonian exile writing. So this is they're coming back, or this is the time where they are living after the Babylonian 70-year exile, the judgment of God against Israel for their many sins. Ezra in Jerusalem focused on those exiles, the fraction. And by the way, they're kind of known as the remnant, but the fraction that returned to the land. Esther exists with those Jews who have been deported and now for the past 70 years have been living scattered throughout first the Babylonian exile, and then secondly now the Medes and the Persian kingdom. And now so Esther lives in. Now let me go back and say this. So in Daniel's prophecy, which we haven't gotten to his writings, I did talk a little bit about the timing here. So you go back to Nebuchadnezzar, and then of course this is the time of Daniel. Daniel has a vision. Nebuchadnezzar has a vision, and he sees this human form. And this human form is divided into four parts. They turn out to be four world dominating kingdoms. Okay, four world dominating kingdoms. It is also a prophetic picture from that time, Daniel or Nebuchadnezzar, to the end of the world, until Jesus comes and destroys the human form, which turns out to be human kingdoms, governments. The prophecy, of course, is that the Babylonian Empire would fall to the Medes and Persians. This is the span of the 70-year exile. So we see, again, we'll see this in the book of Daniel. You see how that Nebuchadnezzar's grandson, who decides that he was going to flaunt and insult God by drinking drinking wine from the golden goblets and all that kind of stuff. Then you see this handwriting, his hand that appears in this big party. His hand appears and starts writing on the wall, and everybody's kind of freaked out about it. The prophecy was that your kingdom is ending now, and it's going to shift from the Babylonian kingdom to the Medes and Persians. So that's where we are right now, in the kingdom of the Mede and Persian. Now the Mede and Persian kingdom is very interesting because they have some very interesting, or not interesting, stupid laws. For example, one of the things we're going to see is that when you have uh, a decree that's issued by the king, it cannot be reversed. So the thing is, why would you put something up like that, right? Or at the very least, you would at least say, okay, let me think about what I'm going to decree. But we're going to see how they would make these foolish decrees about the kingdoms, okay? So let's get into it, the book of Esther. Now, also, Esther is going to be more than she's going to rise to being the queen. But it's going to be more, it is a love story. So you can say it's a personal rise to being queen. And being queen back then is not what people think. Just like today, when we think about the Queen of England today. And in reality, it really means nothing. They have no power, like the Queen of England. I digress in the sense of saying this, that I don't even know why we spend a lot of time, the interest there, but okay. But anyway, the Queen of England, who, of course, last summer passed away, and then, of course, everybody made this huge, big deal out of the Queen of England. But she has no power. Well, in this day, the Queen, more or less, was just kind of you had no power. Absolutely. So it was more so, it was better being queen than it would have been a regular person, but again, no power. However, we're going to see how God will use Esther in her role to actually save the nation. So the biggest thing about the book of Esther is more than a love story, but she will actually be the instrument that will save Israel from destruction. Okay? Okay. All right. Verse 1, chapter 1, verse 1 says, these events took place during the days of Ahasuerus, who ruled 127 provinces, from India to Cush. So that's kind of where his kind of kingdom is. Now, the Medes and the Persians ruled the known world, okay? In those days, King Ahasuerus reigned from his royal throne in the fortress of Susa. He held a feast in the 3rd year of his reign for all his officials and staff and armies of Persia and Medes, Persian and Media, the nobles and the officials from the province. He displayed the glorious wealth of his kingdom and the magnificent splendor of his greatness for a total of 180 days. In other words, they really threw this party to kind of boast in himself, right? Then it said, at the end of this time, the king held a week-long banquet in the garden courtyards of the royal palace for all the people, from the greatest to the least, who were present in the fortress of Susa. White and violet linens hangings were fastened with fine white and purple linen cords to silver rods and marble and columns. Gold and silver couches were arranged on Masonic pavements of red feldspar marble, of mother of pearl, and precious stone. Now remember, he's doing all this to show, look at my greatness here. Beverages were served in an array of gold goblets, each with a different design. Royal wine flowed freely according to the king's bounty, and no restraint was placed on the drinking. The king had ordered every wine steward in his household to serve as much wine as each person wanted. Okay, so in other words, not you ever go to a banquet, right, and you always see these little skimpy right? These skimpy plates. Well, he said, no, 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 let it flow. Verse 9. Queen Vashti also gave a feast for the women of the king Ahasuerus' palace. Palace. So now we kind of introduced to Queen Vashti, okay? And this is the setup as to how we get Esther. On the seventh day, while the king was feeling good from the wine, Ahasuerus commanded Mehuman, Biztha, Harbonah, Bigtha, Abida, Zetar, and Carcass, the 7 eunuchs who personally served him. Now, these guys, to me, did not have glorious life. A eunuch was a person that was castrated. In other words, his genitals were removed. One of the purposes was so that he won't mess around with the king's women. So in other words, their whole now devotion, they could devote themselves to just serving the king. Verse 11, to bring Queen Vashti before him with her royal crown. He wanted to show off her beauty to the people and the officials because she was very beautiful. The Queen Vashti refused to come to the come at the king's command that was delivered by the eunuchs. And the king became furious and his anger burned within him. Now, some things to understand about this. We cannot look at this in today's context. The king was sovereign. We will see later that you could not even approach the king unannounced. You had to be invited. If you dared to take a chance to go before the king and he did not accept you, you would be executed. The king's word was bond. It was authority. Secondly, times for women were different. So Vashti made a huge mistake. As you can see, she was extremely beautiful, and he wanted to show off. However, this was life back then, so she makes a huge mistake by refusing to come at the king's command. Verse 13, the king consulted the wise men who understood the times, for it was his normal procedure to confer with experts in law and justice. The most trusted ones were Karshini, Shethar, Admatha, Tarshish, Meres, Barsini, and Memucan. These were 7 officials of Persia and Media who had personal access to the king and occupied the highest positions in the kingdom. In other words, they were his main men. The king asked, according to the law, what should be done with Queen Vashti, since she refused to obey King Ahasuerus. Ahasuerus, I'm trying to pronounce this right, but anyway, Ahasuerus' command that was delivered by the eunuchs. Menucan said in the presence of the king and its officials, Queen Vashti has wronged not only the king, but all the officials and the peoples who are in every one of King Ahasuerus' providence. For the king's actions will be public knowledge to all the women, and cause them to despise their husband and say, King Ahasuerus ordered the king, as Ahasuerus ordered the queen Vashti brought before him, but she did not come. Before this day is over, the noble women of Persian Media who hear about the queen's act will say the same thing to all the king's officials, resulting in more contempt and fury. In other words, she didn't keep her place. Okay? I'm starting to like this, Val. I better not. Okay. Anyway, I'm joking. No, I'm joking. The point is that, hey, she got out of her place. She didn't keep her place. Okay? Verse 19, if it meets the king's approval, he should personally issue a royal decree. Let it be recorded in the law of Persia and Media, Persian Media, so that it cannot be revoked. Now, this is this law I was telling you about. Once they decree it, it can't be revoked. He said, Vashti should not enter the king Ahasuerus' presence, and her royal position is to be given to another woman who is more worthy than she. The decree the king issued will be heard throughout his vast kingdom, so all women will honor their husbands. I want to move on here. Yes. It says, the decree the king issued will be heard throughout his vast kingdom, so all the women will honor their husbands, from the least to the greatest. I'm kind of liking that. Okay, but I digress. So the king and his counselors approved the proposal and followed Memucan's advice. He sent letters to all the warrior provinces, to each province in his own script, and to each ethnic group and his own language, that every man should be master of his own house and speak in the language of his own people. I'm kind of liking this here. Anyway, I'm joking though. But what this does show, and the reason why this is important, and why Vashti messed up, okay, is that as James Brown said, it's a man's world, and there was no way to change that. So she ends up losing her position. Now, we don't hear from her or what happened to her, because that's not the focus of the story. But she's removed from that position now. Now, you may say, well, did she care? Well, you have to keep this in mind, that the mindset was different. So, in other words, how valuable was her position versus losing? And again, the mindset was different back there. But it also kind of gives a foreshadowing of how things would go. Again, it's kind of a foolish law that once it's decreed, once you write it out, you cannot revoke it. And I think that's kind of stupid, because you should always be able to say, hey, at the very least, we made a mistake. And what this law does, it does not give room for the king to make a mistake. Now, we're going to see this also in Daniel's time, where they get the king to issue a foolish decree. So you always should have. This is why ultimate power. And then you got people like these men who sit around, right? They're influencing the king. He's not necessarily paying attention to what some of these men are saying. But anyway, all right, guys, don't forget to like and share this video. Subscribe to BP, the Bible Perspective. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Add your comments. All comments are welcome. See you in the next study.